So I just released a book named Sailing on a Solar Wind. It's actually, the idea spawned when I started to write a song named Bubble Pop. And the last line in the song goes, where all I care is like the bubbles go pop. And it got me to thinking like, that's a little deeper than I can really describe in a song. So I started writing about it in a book. And eventually, like 2 years later, that morphed into a actual short novel. So Sailing on a Solar Wind is one of these coming-of-age stories. It focuses on a character, Alyssa Mantika, who is trying to integrate some of her personality defects into herself, but who just can't seem to. And I thought that it was much better to make a story about a character who doesn't have glaring problems like, oh hi, I hate my siblings. Oh hi, I hate my mother. Oh, my father divorced my mother. Like stuff that's cliche, overused, and is everywhere. So if you read this story, you're going to notice Alyssa Mantika doesn't really seem to have any like major issues. And part of the reason that is to highlight that life itself just presents you with issues that you need to solve. It's like if you've ever seen a toddler, as soon as he gets to that stage of walking around, he can just move, he's got to get into stuff. And it's like as soon as he gets into stuff, he gets into trouble. It's like he progressed, but his progression itself made his own life, it complicated and made his own life worse in a sense. There's a big theme in this book, at least it seems to me, of what do you do in light of realities that you find are bigger than yourself. There's a lot of philosophy on this, like Standing in the Presence of the Noumenon, which is a book in the 1800s. And it's essentially, the idea is that you're standing before the presence of God, and it's like so overwhelming. But I did realize that from listening to a lot of Pink Floyd, especially watching the music video for Marooned, from their album Division Bell, and from watching a lot of anime, that there's a lot of existentialism of the standing before an idea. And so in this case, Alyssa stands before her memories, and they're so big and so overwhelming she can't understand them, she can't integrate them. But you have the same thing in space. You actually have a lot of replacements for God, or anything that's bigger than yourself. So like even if you're in Yosemite and you see a great big tree, you stand in awe of it. You're like, this thing is huge, I'm tiny, this thing is greater than me. And if you've ever looked a lot at science, astronomy stuff, people always point this out. Oh my gosh, the universe is so vast. The galaxy is so vast. The sun is so vast. Yeah, it all is. And if you spend too much time in it, you feel small. And it's like you're in the presence of this fantastically powerful reality that's bigger than yourself. And so that's actually why it's in the story a lot. I'll have whole paragraphs where I'm like, oh, everything's so big and like doesn't even seem to move. It's all motionless, but it's so huge that even though it's moving really fast, it doesn't seem to move. And it's like, what's the point of talking about that? It's about actually this idea of standing in the presence of, being awe-filled at what is before you. So then there's two themes, because there's some, I put this, when I was originally writing this, I wanted it to be a lot more like the Studio Ghibli film Castle in the Sky, where they have fun adventures, bad things happen, and then like the heroes have to step up. But there's another Studio Ghibli film, Totoro, where you have the two female characters who's they have a lot of interaction together, and you have a lot of comparison contrast between them. And so I began to realize that was a better story, the Totoro story, than the Castle in the Sky story. And that's why they have the characters seem, in my opinion, a little stale and a little hard set in stone, but yet they seem to work together somewhat, even though it's debatable how much they work. And that actually caused me to edit out an entire story where they get captured, and towards the end of the book, they would have, where the pirates meet up with Alyssa Mantika's father. The other story had them being captured at that point, and then Alyssa needing to use the bathroom. Then she escapes through the hatch in the bathroom to the turret, which she uses to shoot something, which then she gets on the track, the rail track, which she already knows how to use, and then hilarity ensues, and somehow something, and then really kind of got muddied at that point, and I was going to use that to develop a lot more of Lexi's character, but the problem was that takes away from the actual theme, which is the coming of age. How do I deal with the problems I have, even though I'm a normal, well-adjusted person? So that eventually actually got edited out. So the real point of the book is actually the reflections I've had on life, and that it's more important to understand your issues and live with them than it is to solve them. Like, I know being a man, you think, oh, okay, it's solved, do this, it's fixed, and only to like a week later, a month later, it comes back again. And so that's why the story seems to have the same thing happening over and over again, and the ending seems kind of open-ended, because it's actually me trying to be realistic and philosophical on what I actually think happens in life. It's not like, in so much of the time in philosophy, you get this one person who comes up, oh, I've got the answer for everything, like you're Nietzsche, for example. He's like, oh, I've got all these criticisms, all these answers. No, you have a lot of criticisms, but your answers really, they lack a lot. And it's more an issue of humility to know that they lack a lot. And that brings me to the final point I wanted to make. One of the reasons why I wrote this book was because I read Sartre's Nausea, and I was so disgusted at the book, because it's essentially about this guy who just wants free stuff, and he's always unhappy when his mistress isn't around when he wants her, or when he's not a happy drunk and he's a sad drunk, then the world's badness. It's like one of these adults who wrote a story about how sad their own life is, and it's just like, it's so stupid, it's such a waste of time. So I wanted to write a philosophical story on certain ideas in existentialism and in self-reflection, and this is what I got. So yeah, if you like this video, you should go buy my book, and if you don't like this video, you should go buy my book anyway, because it'll mean a lot to me.